Bible prophecies are being fulfilled at such an alarming rate, and our goal is to keep you as informed as possible on a daily basis. So today, on End of the Age, I'm going to do something a little different. Rather than spend a whole program on one topic, I'm going to provide you, using today's headlines, with what I call a rapid-fire prophecy update, proving that we truly are living in the end time. So don't touch that dial. Well, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Dave Robbins with End Time Ministries. I thank you for joining me for Tuesday's edition of End of the Age. Now, yesterday, I asked you to help me with a prayer request for Irvin Baxter. He's had some problems in some joints in different places in his body. And so I went and ate dinner with him last evening. He was feeling a little better. He is here in the office. Didn't really feel like being on the radio today, and so that's why I'm back with you this afternoon. And so just continue to remember him in your prayers as you do your personal prayer and devotion time, and that God will keep His hands upon him. He is doing a little better, but he just wanted to kind of refrain from being on the program one more day to try to heal up a little better. So remember Irvin Baxter in your prayers. Now, with that said, I want to announce a prophecy conference that he will be at on this Sunday. It's in Anna, Texas, just north of Plano here. And he's going to be teaching on Trump, Jerusalem, and Armageddon. It's a new lesson that's going to be this Sunday, July 1st, Sunday morning only. Normally our prophecy conferences are Saturday evening, Sunday morning. Well, he's going to just do a Sunday morning segment. That's this coming Sunday from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. And that's at the New Life Anna Church. And that's located at 114 West 4th Street in Anna, Texas, 75409. He's going to be talking about such subjects as President Trump recognizes Jerusalem as Israel's capital, Trump's peace plan to be revealed soon, the ultimate deal with Netanyahu, and that Trump thinks outside the box to get the deal done. Will the final 7 years begin in 2018? And the Middle East peace, the greatest prophetic fulfillment in over 2,000 years. Those are just a very few of the topics he'll be talking about over the course of the prophecy update on this coming Sunday. So if you'd like to see Irvin in Anna, Texas, you can get all the details on our website at endtime.com. And I know it would be a great time. So let's have a great crowd out there in Anna, Texas, this coming Sunday. So what I'm going to do today is something a little different. Normally I'll spend a whole program on one or two topics and get real detailed into each one and take you back through history and everything, so you know exactly what I'm talking about by the time we get done. There's no questions, and you know that, hey, we're in the end time. Well, this is going to be a little different in that it's called a rapid-fire prophecy update. And I'm going to spend the whole program on 15 or 20 different topics from items of news that I got out of today's news headlines. So this is not 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago, 2 years ago. This is today. I went down through all of our news sites that we go through, Drudge and Jerusalem Post, Debka File, all of them. And I chose 15 or 20 topics to go through, 15 or 20 different articles that have to deal with Bible prophecy. It's what I do every day. Normally, I'll pick one or two of the top ones and come on the radio program that afternoon. Well, today, I'm going to try to go through all of them. And so I'm going to spend less time on each topic. So it's called a rapid-fire prophecy update. I did it Thursday night in New York for the church that we started up there, and they loved it because they got so much information on so many different topics. So I thought I'd try it on the radio today And if you like it, if we get good feedback, I'll continue to do things like this periodically, kind of like I do the Q&A segments and different things, and kind of shake it up a little bit because it gives you a lot of information in just a short period of time. So let's take off into our rapid fire prophecy update. The first topic we're going to talk about is world government. It's mentioned in Revelation chapter 13, verse 1 through 2. John saw a vision of a federalized group of nations. The beasts in Daniel 7 and Revelation 13 symbolize nations that would be on the earth at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ. John prophesied about a world governing beast in Revelation 13, 1 through 2. And he said, "And I stood upon the sands of the sea, and I saw a beast rise up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns. And upon his horns 10 crowns, and upon the heads the name of blasphemy. And the beast which I saw was like unto a leopard." So it had the body of the leopard, which we know is Germany, the feet of the bear, Russia, the mouth of the lion, Great Britain, and the dragon gave him his power, his seat, and his great authority. So we're talking about a world governing body that John prophesied about 2,000 years ago in the book of Revelation. Daniel chapter 7, the beasts were 4 separate beasts. When you jump to Revelation chapter 13, it's a federalized organization, a world governing body. When we get back from the break, I'll get off into the news concerning the New World Order, the world government that we will see just prior to the second coming.
We are living in one of the greatest times of human history. We are just before the second coming of Jesus Christ. There are close to 1,000 prophecies concerning this time. Yet, the Scriptures tell us that most people will miss the second coming of Jesus. You do not want to miss this. You can understand the times we live in and what is just ahead. You can share the information with others. Know the truth about Bible prophecy. The Understanding the End Time series was designed to help you learn the prophecies in easy-to-understand terms. 14 hours of teaching about the Mark of the Beast, World War III, Islam in Bible prophecy, and so much more. Equip yourself today by going to endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 to get your Understanding the End Time series. The End Time Prophecy Tour was the most wonderful tour. I would like to thank Irvin and Judy Baxter for a fabulous trip to Israel. I know it took much effort and planning to make it successful. What a tremendous time we all had, which warrants a great big thank you. You can't encapsulate it into words. You can't capture it with a photograph. You just have to experience Israel yourself. The Queen of Sheba said, "The half has not been told." I concur. What an awesome experience to visit the land of Bible history and see it come alive as you walk its paths. I shall be forever changed. Dale from Louisiana.
Join us October 25th through November 5th, 2018. You too can experience Israel with Irvin and Judy Baxter. Go to endtime.com or call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463 to sign up today.
Okay, everybody, so let's continue on with our rapid fire prophecy update. We're talking about world government right here in the beginning. And MPN News published an article, New World Order. It's the beginning of the end of the Bilderberg era. Many of you know about the Bilderberg meetings that happen once a year, and they have all the media, the major media sources in the world. They have the business leaders. They'll have all kinds of tech leaders, everybody in, and political leaders, obviously, and they will send them back with global policies that they want endorsed or they want implemented in the world. And that's one of the ways they're running the world, this Bilderberg meeting. It's been happening for years. Well, this article is talking about the beginning of the end, or the beginning of the end of their era of what they call their New World Order, this world governing body, or a difference in the way they lead this. So it says the beginning of the end of the Bilderberg, Bilderberg-Soros vision is in sight. The old order, or the old New World Order, will cling on even to the last of its fingernails. The Bilderberg vision is the notion of a multicultural, international cosmopolitanism that surpasses the old-time nationalism. In other words, a world governing body, heralding the end of frontiers and leading toward a U.S.-led, technocratic, global economic and political governance. They know exactly what they're asking for in this Bilderberg meetings. And its roots lie with figures such as James Burnham, an anti-Stalin former Trotskyite who, writing as early as 1941, just prior to the United Nations being formed, advocated for the levers of financial and economical power being placed in the hands of a management class, an elite, which alone would be capable of running the contemporary state, thanks to this elite's market and financial technical nouns. So it was bluntly a call for an expert technocratic oligarchy, a world governing body ran by the elite. In short, by 1947, James Burnham's transformation from a communist radical to the New World Order American conservative, a New World Order American conservative, it was complete at that point. We moved fully off into this New World Order system. What has this to do with us today? Well, a Burnham landscape of apparently centrist European political parties, apparently independent think tanks, institutions, and NATO structures was seeded by the CIA in the post-war era of anti-Sovietism across Europe and the Middle East as part of Burnham's battle plan for a U.S.-led global order. That's what their goal was. It is precisely this elite, i.e., Burnham's oligarchic technocracy, that is facing political pushback today to the point which leads the liberal order, this liberal international order they're trying to create, makes it feel that it's struggling for its very survival against, get this, the enemy in the White House. So they're saying, they're calling it right out. We've got an enemy against this New World Order in the White House. And what was the cause of this? Well, whether you like him or hate him, President Trump has played a major part, if only by saying the unsayable. The rationality or inherent in these Eckhart-style unsayings and apophysis is beyond the point. Trump's intuitive discourse of saying the unsayable has taken most of the bolts out of the former Burnham-type ideological structure. In other words, I know that's a little detailed, but in other words, Donald Trump, from the American standpoint, is dismantling bolt by bolt this New World Order governing system because we were the leader of that. The United States for years, for decades now, since its inception in 1945, the United Nations, we've been the leader. Well, now, with the election of Donald Trump, we're pulling out of that. And they're saying here, this could be the end of the Bilderberg era. It's in your news today, talking about world government, and it's prophesied in the Bible that the United States would not be a part of that. Well, we're seeing the withdrawal of that in many ways. Also, in December 2017, and this is, like I said, this is going to be rapid fire, so you'll have to follow closely because I'm going to be jumping from article to article to article. In December 2017, the USA Today published an article titled 10 Ways That Trump Upended the World Order in 2017. So and in the article it stated the imposed travel ban that Trump, in his first week in office, issued a travel ban on people from 8 countries, including 6 that have a Muslim majority populations. Federal courts blocked the ban at that point. The list of countries changed, and the Supreme Court approved the latest version, which affects Iran, Libya, Syria, Yemen, Somalia, and Chad, while legal challenges continued. The ban has been decried by other countries around the world. Well, that was back in 2017. Today, as we speak, Fox News and every news source just about's reporting the Supreme Court upholds Trump's travel ban on some Muslim majority nations. The Supreme Court today upheld President Trump's controversial to the international community, his travel ban affecting several mostly Muslim countries, offering a limited endorsement of the president's executive authority on immigration in one of the hardest fought battles of his term. And this is a humongous victory for our anti-one world government president, Donald Trump. The United Nations is the main driver behind the open border policies of the world government. And it's prophesied that the United States obviously is not going to be part of the end-time one world government. And we are watching, you guys are watching in the news every day. We're watching the ongoing fulfillment of that prophecy every single day in our news. When Trump does something that's against the New World Order, the world government, the international community, the United Nations, when he pulls out of the Paris Climate Agreement, he's pulling out of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, UNESCO, I mean, the Human Rights Council, I mean, one thing right after another. He's pulling us out of all these things, pulling us out of the Iran deal. He's saying, we do not want to be a part of your one world governing body. We have the United States. We signed a Declaration of Independence, not interdependence. We're watching, and it's prophesied that this will happen. We're watching it happen in the news every day. The mark of the beast, Revelation chapter 13, verse 16 through 18. Bible says, and he causeth all, the Antichrist, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their forehead, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark, or the name of the beast, or the number of his name. Here is wisdom. Let him that hath understanding count the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. 666. Most of you know what this is all about. We have a very educated audience, and I know that I talk to you guys all the time at our prophecy conferences, and you guys will call in, email in. I know that we have a very educated audience. But for those that don't know, the mark of the beast system will be used by the Antichrist in the near future to economically sanction individuals into compliance or to a pledge of allegiance to his one world governing body. He's going to get everybody on earth dependent upon a number. And you will have to have that number to function in society. Consider this, our Social Security number here in America. Try to function in society without your Social Security number. It's really not possible. You know, I mean, it would be very hard. I mean, you couldn't buy a house, you couldn't buy a car, you couldn't have a job, you couldn't do your taxes. I mean, it's one thing right after another. You couldn't get a loan, you couldn't do anything without a Social Security number. And so consider that. Well, the Antichrist, that's why they're trying to implement a national ID system in most of the nations on the planet, because they want people functioning under a number. They want you to have that number to be able to function in society. Well, taking a number is not the bad thing, really. Because I've got a Social Security number, but I haven't taken the mark of the beast. It's when the Antichrist economically sanctions you and says, hey, you'll pledge allegiance to me or I will invalidate your number. Okay, the Pledge of Allegiance is going to be the bad thing. And that's going to be the part where you absolutely cannot do that. Now, I would never take a mark of identification on my person, ever. Would never do that. You're getting too close. You're playing with fire at that point, literally. And so I would never take a mark of identification on my person, never pledge allegiance to the world governing system. But we can see this numbering system or this tracking system being set up around the world. The Independent stated that today, go to look at Drudge, thousands of Swedes are inserting microchips into themselves. Is it because of their welfare state? That was the question. Thousands of people in Sweden have inserted microchips, which can function as contactless credit cards, key cards, even rail cards to pay for their rail trip to work every morning and trip home, into their hands. And once the chip's underneath their skin, There's obviously that they say it's a huge convenience. There's no longer any need for worry about misplacing a credit card or carrying a heavy wallet. But for many people, the idea of carrying a microchip in their body feels more dystopian than practical, and it should. That's not something you're going to want to do. The two things you should never do to make sure you do not take the mark of the beast in the future: never take a mark of identification on your person, never pledge allegiance to a world governing body. It's becoming a fad around the world to put chips in your skin. I would never do that. Never do that. These people, we've got to continue to educate people to keep from doing stuff like that. But when I see people overseas, like these Swedes, there's like 3,500 people in the country that have chips in them currently, and there's more happening all the time. I would never do something like that if you know anything about Scripture. Then Investopedia published an article, "The Battle for a Cashless World." It says Europe is miles ahead of the United States on the road to a cashless society. Contactless payments are nearly 70% of the market in Europe and growing fast throughout Asia and other continents. You say, well, why do you guys always talk about a cashless society? These governments that want to track people, they want to do away with cash. These big banks and central banks and different things, they want to be able to track you, everything you do. And so consequently, they want to do away with cash. With cash purchases, you can't track that. And they don't like that. They want to be able to track everything, believe me. And so consequently, they want to go to cashless societies because it's all about control in the future. That's the only reason to number people, is all about control. Other than that, you let them go free. I mean, it's opposites. Control and freedom, cash, digital society. And so consequently, that's why they're trying to create cashless societies. And I would venture to say, if we did a poll of everybody listening to me on the radio, what's the amount of purchases you do today with cash? I would venture to say very few. I know myself, my wife, we very seldom use cash. So we have a huge digital footprint as it is. I know it's funny because I go out with Irvin, Baxter, and his wife a lot, and they use cash still a lot. And we've had some interesting conversations about that because cash is not trackable, and he's still kind of the old school, which is not bad. I just simply don't like the inconvenience of having lots of cash on me. And so consequently, it's just a difference of opinion at this point. But in the future, that digital footprint is going to come into play when they try to track you and know what's going on. I mean, every time you buy gas, you buy groceries, everything you do with a card, somebody's tracking that. And so consequently, in the future, when everybody's dependent upon a number, now that's the goal of this world governing body, when everybody's dependent upon a number, and I know this from prophecy, the Antichrist is going to economically sanction people. Say, hey, you're part of the world governing system. We're going to cut off. We're going to invalidate your Social Security number, America. We're going to invalidate in Europe your national IDs, and you won't be able to function in society unless you pledge allegiance to this world governing body. Now that's what the mark of the beast is all about. And so that's the two things you should never do. Again, never take a mark of identification on your person. Never pledge allegiance to a world governing body or the world governing leader, the Antichrist. There will come a time when we will know who he is, and believe me, we will be screaming it from every radio program we're doing, every television, all of our magazines. We will be saying, this person is the guy. And many of you, like I said, we have a very educated audience, and you will be able, from the prophecies that we've told you about, to recognize this individual, and you're not going to want to have anything to do with him. And so thankful we live here in the United States, which will not be, we're going to resist that in the end time and stand with Israel. And man, am I thankful for that? Absolutely. So there's the mark of the beast. Let me get right back into world government real quick. All kinds of stuff going on. Many ongoing fulfillments of Bible prophecy. World government, the global warming, many of you know the global warming climate change scam is put on by the United Nations. And Global warming is only one of the messages being used to force the nations of the world into a world government. They're keeping you scared all the time. And their solution to that is a global government that can manage all of this. That's the goal here. I can prove that many ways. So anytime you hear the term global governance or propaganda like Agenda 21, Agenda 2030, sustainable development, nationalized health care, social justice, national identification programs, anytime you hear those terms, think world government. That's what those programs are designed to lead towards, a world governing body. But it is global warming, or should I say climate change, now it's been changed to, and that is presently the poster child being used to frighten everyone into giving up freedom in order to save the planet. Now, this is happening on many fronts. The San Francisco Chronicle, a judge just threw out a San Francisco and an Oakland climate lawsuits against big oil because they've said for years, hey, these big oil companies, they're putting off so much carbon emissions, heating up the planet, and they're the problem for climate change. Well, that's actually not the goal behind the world government. They could care less about the big oil. They want to redistribute wealth. That's what this is all about. The global warming climate change scam is all about the redistribution of wealth. Look in the Sustainable Development Goals. I mean, they'll tell you, if you'll do your research, they'll tell you what it's all about. Because it's a socialistic principle of the United Nations. All of this global warming, climate change stuff is handed down by the United Nations to the nations of the world. That's where it all originates. And so we'll talk about this suits that were thrown out against the big oil, which was a good thing, and go off into some more world government and many other topics when we get back.
Move Mountains with Irvin Baxter, the new book by Irvin's grandson, provides 30 days of devotion that will enhance your connection to God and others. Authentic illustrations from early morning devotions at End Time will help you find your purpose and eliminate fears. Commit to taking this 30-day journey and experience real life change. Order this brand new book for only $14.99. Call 1-800-363-8463 or go to endtime.com/move.
We have some exciting news for you today. We have created a new lesson that exposes the establishment. 3 sinister forces are trying to maneuver the United States into a system of global governance. Who is the mastermind behind these organizations? These forces, which are controlled by Satan the dragon, will work hand in hand with the Antichrist, and Americans are fighting back. What is the master plan? Where do things stand right now? We rip the covers off of Satan's hidden agenda and give you answers to all of these questions in Master Plan of the Dragon. Arm yourself with the knowledge to combat these forces. Go to endtime.com to receive your copy today or call 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463.
If your station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com and click the watch button to continue today's broadcast. You can also finish up later by clicking the archive button.
So this San Francisco and Oakland climate suits against these big oil companies, they were thrown out. A federal judge yesterday tossed out 2 groundbreaking lawsuits by San Francisco and Oakland that sought to hold some of the world's largest oil companies liable for climate change, which is a hoax. Please remember that. I know you've heard about it for years by the liberal media. Climate change, global warming. It's a hoax, everybody. The climate has been changing every day since God created the earth. So it's a hoax. It's propaganda by the United Nations. And in an exhaustive 16-page ruling that touched on such scientific matters as the Ice Age and the early observations of carbon dioxide, U.S. District Judge William Alsup acknowledged the problem of a warming planet. Now, he said, hey, yes, there is a warming planet, but said it's too big for the courts to solve. So the cities are trying to get 5 oil and gas plants, these giant plants, including the Bay Area-based Chevron, to help cover. This is what they want them to do, because they say, you guys are causing climate change. We want you to help cover the cost of dealing with sea level rise, which the sea level is not rising. And they want them to help pick up the tab for seawalls that they want to build along the coast. However, Alsup, the judge, noted that Congress and the White House, not the judiciary, are responsible for addressing the fallout from fossil fuels, granted the industry's request to dismiss the suits. So the 2 cases are among the first of many nationwide that have recently attempted to force the oil industry to pay for what amounted to hundreds of billions of dollars to combat climate change. Now, if I was an oil company, I'd be fighting it too, because it's a hoax. The cities and counties all claim that oil companies have long known that greenhouse gas emissions from fossil fuels are warming the planet. Okay, so the question is, and I'm going to prove this here in just a moment, is that true? Are carbon emissions warming the planet? You've read that for years in the news. Carbon emissions, CO2 emissions, things that we emit from our mouth, CO2. We breathe in oxygen, breathe out CO2, okay? So they're saying that we breathe that out, and the Industrial Revolution where, SUVs and factories and this, that, and the other were causing the planet to warm up to the point that if we don't curb that with carbon taxes and different things, that the Earth's going to warm up and we're going to see, these cataclysmic Earth, or these like tornadoes and all this hurricanes and different things are going to get stronger and stronger and stronger, and we're going to destroy the planet. Now, that's the scam. And they say we need the United Nations, this world governing body, to oversee all of this and manage it. That's what the Sustainable Development Goals was about. One of them is climate change. And the Paris Climate Agreement was the commitments by the nations that they would adhere to these regulations that were set forth in the Sustainable Development Goals. It was all a scam, everybody. That's why when Donald Trump pulled us out of the Paris Climate Agreement, these internationalists, the international community, howled, he's not playing ball with the world government. Now you understand the dynamics behind what was going on, because it's their scam. Now, let me read you one more article, and then I'll get into some proof. George Washington University. This comes from their History News Network, and it says that Pope Francis versus Scott Pruitt. And all of this stuff's in your news today. Go to your news on the internet, look up reliable news sources. You can get all this stuff. Pope Francis published an encyclical, Laudato Si, in 2015. And he stated that we would need a global political authority or a world government to manage the crisis of global warming, climate change. Go read the encyclical. I read it and it's like 40-some thousand words. I mean, my eyeballs were hanging out by the time I got done. And he said he advocated a world governing body to manage this, and which he says, if left unchecked, could destroy the planet. So what's the rift? What's the rift about between Pope Francis and Scott Pruitt, who's the current head of the Environmental Protection Agency? Well, scientific evidence, they say in this article, scientific evidence overwhelmingly, this is what they're claiming, attest to the existence of human-caused global warming. The problem, they say, however, is that many people ignore or dispute such evidence, i.e. Dave Robbins, okay? Such it has been with, and they say such it has been with evolution as well. And so now it is with global warming. In other words, Christians who believe in the Bible and believe in creation have overlooked scientific evidence that said that we actually evolved, that there was evolution, the Big Bang Theory and all that. Well, okay, now I totally disagree with that. I'm a Christian. I believe God created the heavens and the earth. That's what the Bible says. I can prove the validity of the Bible and by many ways. And so, but they're saying that I've overlooked scientific evidence because I believe that. Well, a recent example has been they say that somebody who's overlooked this scientific evidence has been the man that President Trump appointed to the job of protecting the environment, or the head of the Environmental Protection Agency, Scott Pruitt. So they're saying that in this article, Trump or Pope Francis is against Scott Pruitt because he says, hey, it's scientifically proven that climate change, global warming is man-made. So here's the premise, and let me just give you one proof because I want to get through a lot of different articles today. But one proof is that temperature, this is the, I'll dive off into it and then you'll see what I'm saying. Temperature increases CO2, not vice versa, okay? So here it is. In his now famous global warming documentary, you'll remember, An Inconvenient Truth, former Vice President Al Gore produced a graph. He actually produced two graphs depicting the variations of temperature and levels of CO2 in the atmosphere over the last 650,000 years according to computer-generated models, okay? In the graph, and he stood in front of this huge black screen, and he had these two graphs here. The one was way up above, one was down below, and you couldn't lay them over each other in the movie. And so in the graph, Al Gore strategically separated the two lines and placed the temperature line below the CO2 line. They were separated. And that was done in an attempt to create the delusion that when the amount of CO2 emissions increased, that the temperature would automatically begin to climb, that it would follow CO2. And Mr. Gore's obvious conclusion was that global warming was being generated by mankind's modern industrial development, which has increased the amount of CO2 emissions in the atmosphere. And as a solution, say, what did he propose to do about it? Well, he advocated global laws that would revolutionize our lifestyle. Get this, redistribute the wealth, a socialistic platform, redistribute the wealth of the world through his proposed cap-and-trade legislation, and establish a system of global governance that would end national sovereignty. Now, that's the goal at the end of the day to the global warming climate change scam. We need a world government. They don't care about the crisis. They don't care what the crisis is. They just need a crisis that's ongoing so that people will yield up their sovereignty in the name of security. That's the goal here. However, because that's why you're going to see that's why he didn't superimpose the CO2 graph over the temperature graph. There was a huge problem with that. He wouldn't do that in his video. However, after the experts analyzed the graph by placing the CO2 line directly over the temperature line, which is how it should have been, they proved conclusively, without a shadow of a doubt, that the CO2 levels had risen only as a result of the increase in temperature, not the other way around. A close look at the graph revealed that the lag time, so that between the temperature and the CO2 levels changing, was at sometimes throughout history as much as 800 years. Temperature had risen, and then as much as 800 years later, the CO2 levels began to rise. Not the other way around. Al Gore was stating that the CO2 levels rose and that the temperatures followed. And then he was saying, hey, we've got more CO2 emissions in the air today, and so the temperatures are beginning to rise. But once they put the graphs over each other, they proved that over the last several thousand years, that temperatures had risen first, and then CO2 levels begin to go up. Okay? totally disproving. So that's one proof alone that has destroyed the entire basis for the global warming theory. And an increased amount of CO2 does not result in global warming. Actually, the opposite is true. So now you can see that the goal behind it all is world government. I have quotes in my office, in our files in there, where politicians and different people are saying, hey, the goal is global government. The crisis doesn't matter, whether it's true or whether it's a lie. I've got the quotes. Whether it's true or whether it's a lie, all we need is the right crisis. You've heard Rahm Emanuel or Hillary Clinton say, never waste a good crisis. Well, that's what they need. They need that crisis. Well, that's what they've got. They've come up with this global warming, climate change scam. And let me say, before I go off into the next segment here, is that this is what it is with the United Nations, is that it is a humanitarian organization, or it was a humanist. There's no mention of God in that. They've taken the God out of that. And that's a real problem here in the last days. Taking God out of our society, because then you come up with this, is that they take the God element out of it. God can't control the climate. We need to. We're destroying the planet, so we need a humanistic world government that can manage all this stuff. And folks, this is the propaganda that's being preached every day in the news. Global warming, which leads to climate change. And now you had some people that were trying to get some of the biggest oil companies on the planet to build seawalls out around San Francisco and Oakland, because they say, hey, if this continues, the seas are going to rise, and they're going to flood our cities and this, that, and the other. It's all a hoax, everybody. The temperature may rise today, and it may be 70 tomorrow and rain. And over the course of time, God has a way of heating things up and cooling them down. He's been doing it. He's very, very good at it. He's been doing it for thousands of years now. The Bible says as long as the earth remains, there's going to be the different seasons. There's going to be hot and cold, spring, winter, summer, fall. It's going to be here as long as this earth remains. We don't have to worry about it. God's got it. All we got to do is worry about is doing His will here on the earth, doing the best we can to serve Him so we can meet Him one day and spend eternity with Him. That's our goal. Let God worry about the climate. He's very good at taking care of it, believe me.
If ever people need to hear the unvarnished truth, it is now. There are some subjects that are not politically correct to talk about, but they're urgent. That's why I'm grateful for End Time Magazine. If you're not a subscriber, you're missing information that will really impact your life. End Time has a bi-monthly magazine that explains how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. You can get a 2-year subscription for only $29. You can also get a bulk subscription and pass them out to your church. We have gotten reports that End Time Magazine has caused spiritual awakenings in churches when they see the prophecies being fulfilled right now. You can start your own ministry and leave them in doctors' offices, libraries, laundromats. You never know if you might be responsible for saving someone who is searching for the unvarnished truth. That's what the magazine has done in many lives. Call 1-800-363-8463. That's 1-800-END-TIME and get your subscription today.
So let's go off into another segment in my rapid fire prophecy update today. And believe me, I'm going to have to skip a lot. And this was all today's news. You realize that? I got all this from today. And so that's what I'm saying. These things are happening so fast, letting us know we're in the end time. We don't lack the knowledge of ongoing fulfillment of Bible prophecy. We lack the ability to keep up with all of it. That's kind of where we're at. We've got a research team that helps us with this, But I mean, occasionally I'll have somebody send me something from Japan or Australia, and I haven't even heard about it. And it's a big occurrence on the prophetic timeline. I'm like, wow, I missed that. And we're in global, national, and local news all day long, every day. And so these things are happening so fast. So really quick, let me go through some more. The Holocaust in 1933, from 1933 to 1945, is prophesied about in Scripture. Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 1 through 14, or Ezekiel's boneyard. Many of you will know the story of Ezekiel's boneyard. The Lord sent him to prophesy to the valley of dry bones. And Ezekiel prophesied after receiving a vision of the bodies of millions of Jews killed by Nazi Germany in the Holocaust, that the nation of Israel would live again and become strong. Go read the story. Ezekiel chapter 37, verse 1 through 14. Well, in today's news, Jerusalem Post reported that Prince William was at the Yad Vashem, which is the Holocaust Museum in Israel, and he said, we must not forget the Holocaust. And Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his wife Sarah greeted Prince William at their residence in Jerusalem today after the Duke of Cambridge began his first full day in Israel as a visit to Yad Vashem. And William wrote this in the guest book. He said, it is almost impossible to comprehend the appalling event, this appalling event in history. Every name, every photograph and memory recorded his grandmother, is a tragic reminder of the unimaginable human cost of the Holocaust and the immense loss suffered by the Jewish people. He said, we must not forget the Holocaust, the murder of 6 million men, women, and children simply because they were Jewish. And he went on to say, we all have a responsibility to remember and teach future generations about the horror of the past so that they can never reoccur. May the millions of Jews, of Jewish people, be remembered by Yad Vashem, never be forgotten. So you can see there was a prophecy 2,500 years ago by Ezekiel, in Ezekiel chapter 37, about a future vision that Ezekiel was given of a boneyard. We believe it was the Holocaust. And Ezekiel, the Lord said, go, Ezekiel, teach, speak unto these, preach unto them. And he did. And they started coming back together, and they started, bones come together, and sinew came on the bones, and muscle came on that, and flesh. And God said, this is the whole house of Israel. I'm going to bring them all back together. So he was seeing a vision of the Holocaust, Ezekiel chapter 37, 1 through 14. And in today's news, Prince William was there at Yad Vashem and writing in the guest book, we must never forget after seeing that. And if you've never been to Yad Vashem or a Holocaust museum, you need to go. There are people in the world that would like people to forget what happened there. But I honestly don't like to go through Yad Vashem because it breaks my heart every time I do that. Many times I'll go sit with the Jewish guides because it's some horrible stuff until you've seen it. What they did, the Germans were such a deviant people at that point, the Nazis, and they would video some of the things they did in the Holocaust. Well, after World War II, when the concentration camps were liberated, they got some of that video, and it's in Yad Vashem. And so it's rough. I mean, it's hard to watch even. And so Prince William went through there today, and he wrote in the guest book saying, let the world never forget what happened here today, prophesied about by Ezekiel 2,500 years ago. So the next segment, and this is all in today's news. This, like I say, and this is rapid fire. I'm giving you as many as I can. The Express media source says that the blood moon of 2018 is July's blood moon, a sign of the end of the world. And I scratch my head over this because it seems like every time there's a blood moon that somebody wants to say, well, hey, it's the end of the world. This article said the blood moon 2018 will ominously appear during the July total lunar eclipse, and some biblical conspiracy theorists have claimed the blood moon will be a prophetic sign of the end time. And you know, I've got to ask the question, where is that in Scripture? The Bible's very specific. The Bible does talk about a last day blood moon. Now that is true. Totally agree. But it's like studying any other topic in the Bible. If you gather all the scriptures that pertain to that topic, then you kind of get an idea of what the writers were really saying. And a lot of times when it's prophetic, they'll give you a timeline almost to follow about when stuff's going to happen. And so if you look in Matthew chapter 24, verse 29, these are the words of Jesus at the Olivet Discourse. And it says, immediately after the tribulation of those days. So, are we in the tribulation now? No, we're not. So for somebody to put out, hey, this blood moon that's coming up in July, it could be the end of the world. You don't have to lose a wink of sleep over that, because according to the Bible, it's not the case. So Jesus said in Matthew 24, 29, immediately after the tribulation of those days shall the sun be darkened, the moon shall not give her light, stars will fall from heaven, and the powers of heavens shall be shaken. You say, well, hold on a minute, Dave. That doesn't say that the moon's going to turn to blood. Well, this is why I'm saying you got to pull all the scriptures together to understand, to get the big picture. If you look in Revelation chapter 6, verse 12 and 13, this is an account of the exact same thing Jesus was talking about, the exact same event Jesus was talking about in Matthew chapter 24. And Revelation 6, 12 through 13 states this, and I beheld when he opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. Get this, the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood. So it adds another clue as to what happened in Matthew chapter 24. So Jesus didn't say the moon became blood in Matthew 24, but in John's account, it does. So when you tie all these scriptures together, go back into the book of Joel where it talks about the moon turning to blood. If you tie them all together, then you can kind of get the big picture and say, wow, I finally understand what's going on here. And it goes on to say, and the stars of heaven fall unto the earth. Look at Matthew 24's account that Jesus gave. And the stars shall fall from heaven. Revelation 6, even as a fig tree casteth her untimely figs when she is shaken of a mighty wind. So it's very clear to see that the Bible does talk about a blood moon in the future. But Jesus specifically said immediately after the tribulation of those days. And so it's very important. Remember, any topic, whether it's salvation, whether you want to talk about the difference of the law and grace, I mean, anything you want to talk about in the Bible, prophecies, you've got to tie all the scriptures together that pertain to that topic, and then you get the big picture, and you can say, wow, I've kind of got a timeline here. I understand what all of the writers are trying to say, what God was trying to tell me through these scriptures, and you get the big picture. And it really helps. But if you go pull one scripture out, man, a lot of times you can get confused. That's why many times in the Bible, there are many, the Bible says line upon line, precept upon precept. You got to put everything together. Once you do that, you get the big picture. Okay, so I think this may be the final one I get to, and I may not get through all of it. But precursors to the Great Tribulation in our news today. Matthew chapter 24, 21, Jesus said, for then shall be great tribulation. So there is a specific time of tribulation. Then the Bible says we shall all have trials and tribulations. But he said there's going to be a specific time of tribulation at just prior to his second coming. He said, such as was not since the beginning of the world to this time, no, nor ever shall be. So he was prophesying. We know, here again, if you tie all the scriptures together, you know that tribulation period is the final 3.5 years. Well, the CNS News reported that the Supreme Court of the United States, that it remanded a flower shop case to the Washington Supreme Court. So this is yet another case involving issues of religious freedom in which the Supreme Court of the United States has declined to make a definitive decision. And this Supreme Court case, it stems from a trilogy of cases involving the owner of Arlene's Flowers. Her name is Barronelle Stutzman. And Mrs. Stutzman refused to do flowers for a same-sex wedding. And she cited her religious freedom. I don't agree with that. She would have made them flowers for any other occasion, but she said, I can't make flowers for a same-sex wedding. It goes against my religious belief. Well, the American Civil Liberties Union represented the couple, the two men who wanted to get married, Robert Ingersoll and Kurt Fried, on the grounds of discrimination in the first civil lawsuit of Ingersoll versus Arlene's Flowers. Well, in 2015, Barronelle Stutzman, the owner of Arlene's Flowers and Gifts in Richland, Washington State, was ordered to pay over $1,000 in fines after declining to provide a floral arrangement for a same-sex wedding. So the point is here, and this is just one of many. I'm not going to have a point. I was going to go through a bunch of them. I'm never going to have time to do all that. But even though Christians in America have not been subjected to, you know, let's say it gets really drastic public executions, we've not seen that here in America. We've seen that overseas, obviously, recently, but not here in America. There are still efforts of oppression against Christians in this country as we speak. You just heard about the Jack Phillips case, where he went before the Supreme Court, and he actually won. He refused. He was a Christian business owner, just like Barronelle Stutzman, and he refused to bake a cake for a gay couple that came in. He told them, he said, I'll sell you anything. You can come in anytime you want. I'll sell you anything you want. I'll make you any kind of cake, but I can't participate in a same-sex wedding. That ceremony, I don't agree with that, and I can't make a cake that supports that. You know, in my artistic, and he paints cakes and does all kinds of stuff. I looked at his website, very cool. But as a result of that, he was sued, and he ended up losing 40% of his business. And so he just went before the Supreme Court. He won the Supreme Court case, and he had a great victory. And so, very important, there have been, and on top of that, there have been photographers. There have been other cake and cake makers. I think Sweet Cakes by Melissa out in the state of Oregon. A lot of different people that have said, hey, us as Christian owners, we'll take photographs for whoever. We'll bake cakes for whoever. Stutzman said, I'll make flowers for whoever. But if you want me to participate in a same-sex wedding, I can't do that. Well, they've been sued. They've been fined. Some of them have been put out of business simply by standing by their religious beliefs. I'm not talking about in China. I'm not talking about in Russia or in North Korea or some of them places. I'm talking about the United States of America, everyone. And so this article today on Barronelle Stutzman was in today's news, is that the Supreme Court sent her back. They put her case back in Washington State and said, hey, you know, we'll let them take care of it. So all of this stuff was in our news today. I probably got through half of my material today, everybody, of dealing with Bible prophecies. This has been a rapid-fire prophecy update, and I still didn't get through half of it. So perhaps in the future, if you guys give good reviews on this and you like this kind of stuff where I give you a lot of information, go to our news sources, email me, let me know, and I'll do it again in the future.
This has been End of the Age, brought to you by the faithful partners of End Time Ministries. If you're not currently a partner with End Time Ministries, or if you would like more information, we invite you to call us at 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463, or visit us online at endtime.com.
Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our Facebook page.